Sling TV has something for everyone. It really just depends on what kind of mood you're in. But no matter what you're looking for, you can watch it with Sling. Sports, news, and today's hottest shows. Plus, you can explore thousands of movies and shows on demand. And getting Sling is easy. Sign up and start watching in just 5 minutes. Stream on any device and record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. Plus, you won't get locked into a long-term contract. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. Welcome to the Andy Staples Show presented by Sling. We have an esteemed panel with us today. Ari Wasserman, Scott Docterman. We're going to talk about the college football playoff without talking about the college football playoff. Because I got to tell you guys, I am really enjoying this college football season. And I really don't think about the Final Four or the national champion very much from week to week right now. And I think it's because I'm just having so much fun with these games. There's so much going on. Alabama, Tennessee obviously may ultimately have national championship playoff implications, but in the moment, it was just so much fun. Michigan, Penn State was not a close game, but was probably for Michigan fans a game that they've been waiting for a long time. To see them be that dominant. You know, they did it against Ohio State last year. But can you be that again? Yes, they can be that again. You know, the USC Utah game was awesome. This week, we got undefeated Syracuse against undefeated Clemson. We got undefeated Ole Miss going to LSU, and Vegas has made Ole Miss an underdog after Ole Miss was initially posted as a favorite. We got UCLA, Oregon in the Pac-12. Can UCLA stay undefeated? Guys, it feels like there's so many storylines in the game. Am I wrong? Have the games been more fun this year?
Well, I was going to say to you, I think the games have been more fun, but I don't remember a season in the recent past where this many teams were still in the good category going into the third week in October. I mean, you just mentioned a few of them, but you got Tennessee and a real Tennessee, which is different than a 6-0, you know, regular 6-0. Like that's
right. Nothing's fluky about it. They've beaten LSU, they've beaten Alabama. They're good.
You know, Clemson and Michigan are undefeated. So you still have Georgia and Ohio State. That's not entertaining, but Michigan, Clemson, you have Ole Miss undefeated, TCU's undefeated, UCLA's undefeated. All Power 5 schools or Power 5 conferences still have a legitimate candidate for the college football playoff still. And I feel like every year the college football playoff discourse starts once the picture becomes clear. And I think the reason why we've put it off is because the picture isn't clear enough to have an opinion yet. I mean, and even if you look down into the teens, like Illinois, what's going on?
Yes.
Is Illinois going to Indianapolis? Syracuse. Wake Forest is 5-1. USC is 6-1. Oklahoma State's 5-1. Oregon's 5-1. I mean, there's a lot of really good storylines here. I mean, listen, North Carolina is 6-1 and they're number 22. Like, There's a lot happening in the season this year for sure.
I'll give you another one. Here's a crazy one. Tomorrow, well, if you're listening to this podcast tonight, so Thursday night, Georgia Tech faces Virginia. If Georgia Tech wins, remember Georgia Tech, which has fired its coach. If Georgia Tech wins tonight, they will be 3-0 in the ACC Coastal. Their only conference loss is to Clemson. Like, they will be in the driver's seat of the Coastal.
You know, this is what makes it such a great sport and so interesting. I mean, watching that scene unfold at Tennessee last week, which was a total palate cleanser for me because I was off that day. You know, I got to see some offense, but
100 points. Scott needed that.
I needed
101 points in a game.
I haven't seen that all season, but no, it was just great to see the college football home environment. That's what makes it so different from any other sport, even the NFL, because you're seeing 105,000 people rush in the field and you're seeing the atmospheres take root. And these games matter. They've mattered for 100 years. Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, the third Saturday in October, Penn State, Michigan, one of the big three, I guess, of the Big Ten. It's just, these games are awesome. And you don't want to turn this into college basketball where it's all about March. March is great, but the 5 other months are kind of meh. You know, this is what makes it awesome because it's so much better than playing in a sterile environment indoors somewhere.
Did Tennessee score more points in that game than Iowa has all year?
No, Iowa's got a 27-pointer a couple of times.
No, I'm saying combined.
No. Oh, combined those two? God,
No, I thought I read a stat somewhere that Iowa has 47 offensive points.
I think Tennessee scored more offensive points than Iowa has scored all year, though.
No, Iowa scored 27 twice.
Their defense scored some of those.
Yeah, they scored 2 touchdowns in one of those games.
Yeah,
you have to add it up for me here. Anyway, either way, it was exciting. Let me have my moment. God,
I know.
I just want to watch
on Iowa's offense later and force Scott to talk about it more later.
We have a segment with Iowa offensive statistics when he's trying to have a good time.
I know. It's like it's like, hey, every single week I come in here, it's like burning down the house. It's like, hey, by the way, it was great, but you guys, your house was on fire. What happened there?
Trevor in the live chat, would a team with Tennessee's offense and Iowa's defense be the team of the decade? Be the team of the century? That team would be unstoppable.
I would do anything to watch Tennessee play Iowa.
See, I think Tennessee would get open against Iowa, and then Iowa still wouldn't score against Tennessee. Actually, that sounds like what's going to happen this weekend.
We're kind of getting that game this weekend, yeah.
And we got to go through this. Yeah, it's unfortunate because Iowa does have a really good defense, but it's not an invincible defense. It's one that's going to get scored on because what'll happen is they generally give up a touchdown on their first possession because everybody kind of figures them out and then they tighten up. Well, what'll happen is they'll go first down run for 1, second down pass incomplete, third down sack, punt. Ohio State will get the ball midfield, score again, and then it'll be off to the races.
So, guys, I want to ask each of you, what game are you most excited about this weekend? Because I think there's going to be some where we come away going, man, that was awesome. Maybe none of the spectacle of Alabama, Tennessee, but I have a feeling come Saturday night, we're going to be looking back and going, oh, that was another fun one.
Scott, do you have one locked up? Because I have one right off the tip of my tongue.
You go first.
Well, actually, it's not. I've got 2. I can't wait to watch UCLA play Oregon. Mm-hmm. Because if UCLA takes the screws to Oregon, then you have a legitimate conversation about whether this team actually can make the playoff, which is incredible. And then 2, I'm very excited to watch Ole Miss LSU because I'm like on high Ole Miss watch, and I find it strange that they're dogs. Vegas always knows, but that is a pretty important game in the SEC that doesn't involve one of the traditional powers. So that to me is good. And then, of course, Syracuse and Clemson also.
A couple that I like, one in the Big Ten, it's a night game. It's a whiteout, Minnesota at Penn State. And this is kind of what we're talking about with the sport. Neither one of these teams are going to go to the playoff now. They both lost last week decisively in division, and they won't go to their conference championship game. However, whoever gets off the mat first has a chance to kind of save their season. And Minnesota has a great running back and a really good defense. Penn State looked horrible last week against the run. But can they, they have the whiteout. That's one of the great atmospheres in college sports. So I really like that. And then Purdue, Wisconsin. Contrasted styles. Wisconsin's won 15 straight against them, but Purdue, I still like Purdue in the West. So I kind of like both of those games.
And we've seen Purdue win a rock fight against Minnesota. They can do that. That's what I think makes Purdue a little bit different this year, and why I think Purdue, Illinois winds up being the game for the Big Ten West title. And that's another, I'm fascinated by the Big Ten West. I think that race is really interesting just because it still feels like everybody's in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for Illinois Purdue. I think that's next weekend, right?
It's the 12th of November.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least I was close, right?
Only 2 weeks off.
A whole month off, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me give you another one, guys. Texas at Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because Texas is coming off a game that for the past 10 years, Texas would have lost. That Iowa State game, Iowa State had them on the ropes in Austin. And the Texas teams probably from 2010 on would have found a way to lose that game. But this one didn't. This one won. Now they're going to a team that is better than Iowa State with a quarterback who can make magic happen in an environment that is really tough to play. And it feels like the fans are 2 inches away from the sidelines at Boone Pickens Stadium. Like there's some tight stadiums in the country. Like Florida Field is one of them where it's very hard to, you don't have much space. But Boone Pickens feels like the tightest one. It feels like they are literally suffocating the opponent.
When I saw that Texas was laying a touchdown in that game, I was like, what? Somebody
Why?
explain this to
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kinnick and Boone Pickens are the two tightest. I mean, it's 7 yards from the sideline to the fans, and I like that one too. I think in the Big 12, anything can happen. I before the season, I thought it would be the most exciting conference because I don't think anybody's going to the playoff, but I think any of them could win it. And when we were looking at Iowa State, they've lost the last 3 games by combined 7 points. Last week they win at Texas. If Xavier Hutchinson, probably the best receiver in the league, catches the ball and he drops it.
He was wide open. It was right there. Yeah, it was.
He jumped, right?
Yeah.
Why did he jump?
Well, and look, I don't know if that was targeting on the final on the fumble by Deckers. Matt Campbell certainly thought it was, but that's one of those. He's so close to having his knee down before the ball comes out. If the ball pops out a 1/10 of a second later, Iowa wins because he's down. And that's not a fumble, and Iowa wins.
Yeah, I think that I disagree with you guys on, or maybe you don't have this opinion, but that's not the first Big 12 game I would mention this week. Kansas State at TCU is probably the more entertaining game to me because, I watched TCU have a really thrilling comeback last week in person, and I thought that they, illustrated the types of things that we talk about on this podcast all the time, which is, can you win multiple types of games? Mm-hmm. They've put up some big offensive numbers in some games, and this time they erased a 14-point deficit in the fourth quarter to win an overtime game at home against a very good team. So, the reward they get for that is to get a Kansas State team in, and Kansas State has a loss. Losing to Tulane on the schedule looks kind of odd, but they're undefeated in the Big 12 still, right? So they beat Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and Iowa State. So, I mean, that's a really tough game too. It's like how many games does TCU have to win before we really start taking them seriously as a program?
Well, I think we can take them seriously now, but I think because of the way the Big 12 is set up, they can't breathe. They can't be like, okay, we're in the Big 12 title game, really, until they're sitting with a 7th conference win.
Yeah, I mean,
as crazy as that sounds.
Because the whole league, and I mean, the last place could beat first place right now, and that's just the way it all kind of sets up. Although the TCU did beat Iowa State, I think, by a touchdown, but it's a nuts league. And I also like Kansas at Baylor. I think that could be a really fascinating game this week.
Yeah,
Kansas State's schedule for the next month is at TCU, home against Oklahoma State and Texas, then at Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
So
and go look at Texas's next 3. Texas's next 3 are Oklahoma State, K-State, and TCU. It's crazy. And programming note, by the way, Max and Sam in this here podcast feed have Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State star tailback, their show this week.
Love that for them. Yeah, that's going to be a good show.
You can find that in this feed. You can also go to the Andy Staples Show YouTube channel and watch that if you'd like. Deuce is awesome. He has an incredible commercial that he stars in for porta potties. It's incredible. So
who are they advertising porta potties to?
People who have job sites, construction sites, or if you're putting on a big event, you're going to need to.
I just kind of feel like the porta potty is the type of thing that you would.
This is a local company, though. So I'm saying porta potty. The porta potty is kind of like Band-Aid and Kleenex, where it's the brand name. And so I probably shouldn't be saying that. I can't remember the exact name of the company, but
listen to the show to find out. But
yeah, it's Deuce Vaughn and Felix Anudike-Uzama, who's their great edge rusher, and then their best volleyball player, all star in this thing. And it's basically Deuce is running around trying to find somewhere where deuces are welcome. And,
it needs to drop a deuce,
and it's not the ones belonging to these other 2 fine K-State athletes.
Okay.
But he finally finds his own. I think they're called Cat Cans. I think that's the company. And,
I was just going to say, if you need a porta potty, you don't need, you need one, that's.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see that.
It's one of my favorite NIL deals so far this year. So, but yes, the Big 12, and think about this, guys, because we're looking ahead tomorrow, which is Thursday. We're recording this on Wednesday. Ari, you and Nicole will be at the CFP meetings in Dallas. There's a chance they may be able to hammer out details and say starting the 12-teamer in 2024. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. But when that happens, for all intents and purposes, the Big 12 champ will be in the playoff each year. Imagine a year like this where there's definitely a spot at the end of the rainbow for that champ. And oh, by the way, throw in UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston. By the way, Houston's not having a great year, but the current UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU teams, I think, will all be competitive in this league right now.
For sure.
What a fun league, man. Things didn't work out right with them for Oklahoma and Texas. But I'm telling you what, every Thursday night or whatever their next deal is going to come up, it's going to have some awesome football. It's going to have must-see TV, and they're going to have a team go to the playoff every year, as you said. So I'm totally looking forward to it.
And we mentioned that we have not turned our discussion to the playoff because the picture's not clear, because there are so many teams that we consider good. So I'm curious, when it's 12, will we push that discussion later because it won't be clear, because we'll have so many teams that we consider eligible to make it? Like, I'm starting to wonder, are we going to focus just more on the games than the end when that happens? Because it feels like we're doing that now with the 4-team because we feel like there's more teams that are worthy.
I guess it's an interesting theory.
I don't know if that's what will happen. It's just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea of we're waiting longer to get to really I mean, when do we typically start really diving into discourse for the college football playoff in a normal year?
Of October, I feel like.
Yeah.
So if we're 3 weeks behind because there's so many different teams that are still out there, then I guess you could say that in a place where we have 12 going, then what's the point of breaking it down yet? Because I mean, if there was 12 this year, think about how many people. I mean, half the country would still be in play here. So
there'd be 9 Big 12 teams that we'd feel still
have a chance
could make
right.
it. Yeah.
So I mean, at times too, it's like it's fun to say, well, this is a CFP team or whatever, but like it's kind of pointless to talk about when you have 9 teams in one league who are still technically alive to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the idea of this, because what it does is it makes the end of the season more relevant. And this is relevant for different geographies. Like, let's say Bama's and Auburn are playing the Iron Bowl the same day as Wisconsin, Minnesota. And Auburn's thinking, hey, if we upset Bama, we could get in there, but Wisconsin's ranked ahead of us. And you're playing that kind of math. I think that makes every game more important, not less important, as people would say. So I'm all about that. And I think the discussion will kind of follow, because what we're seeing now is we're seeing kind of the crux of, okay, the Ohio State Michigan's winner is going to get there. The winner of the SEC is going to get there. Probably a second SEC team. Who's next? Well, there's still a lot of season to be played. I mean, we don't know if Clemson will get in there. What if the Ohio State Michigan winner, it's only a three-point game? Could they get in? We saw a great game last week with Tennessee Bama. So, Tennessee Bama. And so I don't know. I think that there's still too many teams to where it's that relevant to the discussion.
Yeah, and like we still could have some earth shakers. The Syracuse-Clemson game is fascinating to me because I know Clemson is the 13.5-point favorite. Syracuse played them tough last year. We're getting into I'm going back farther than the current players were there, but in 2018, Syracuse nearly derailed Clemson's national title season. It took the miracle pass from Chase Bryce on 4th down to win that game. 2017, Syracuse beat Clemson. And this is a kind of a different team at Syracuse because Dino Babers still does, what he does with it. They've got the kind of foundation of that offense is that old Baylor offense, but they've added so many different elements, like Robert and I and Jason Beck coming from Virginia, sprinkling in the things they did there with Bronco Mendenhall. And you see them, playing with a couple tight ends, playing with a couple backs. Like it's a fun offense, and it's not what we're used to seeing from them. And like Garrett Schrader, I think, a lot of fans just remember Garrett Schrader from the helicopter hit he took when he played for Mississippi State. But like, if you saw that Purdue game this year, Syracuse-Purdue was bananas. And so they could be a fun team against Clemson. This could be a better matchup. I did SiriusXM on Wednesday, and we had Dabo Sweeney on, and he is absolutely taking this one very seriously because this is their biggest challenge left, and they've played them so tough over the years that he is not taking anything lightly this week.
Andy, look at the comment we just got from Go Black 45.
Sure.
Throw that up there because I think this is interesting.
Yeah. Honest question, guys. Why is it so bad for college football to talk about the CFP? It's fine, but it's fine to talk about the Super Bowl and the NFL preseason. We talk about the national championship and the college football preseason as well, but we're not. The problem is it feels like we eliminate so many teams from the discussion each year because they're not going to make the playoff, because they're not going to compete for the national title, that we just forget about them. And we're like, oh, this game doesn't matter. This game doesn't matter. This game doesn't matter nationally, when it still does matter to a lot of people in the fan base itself, but also could be just a really fun game to watch. And I don't like that we get so tied up in the four that we're not worried about the rest. Like NFL playoffs, there's going to be not quite half the teams in the league make the playoff, but almost. And so that means more than half the teams in the league are in play deep into the season to make the playoff. So you don't have games that you're like, well, this doesn't matter. You have a few, but not many.
I mean, what you're describing here is a fundamental shift from national championship focus to postseason focus.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
we're always going to talk about who might win the national championship before the season. That's never going to go away.
Everything used to be so regionalized. Hey, the champion's going to go to the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or whatever. And now it's just these four. And whereas at the NFL, people make their Super Bowl predictions and who's going to win the AFC and NFC. But then it kind of stops for a couple of months and you just kind of let the games marinate. And then you come back to it, right around Thanksgiving about, okay, how does this set up for the playoff run? But it's more about the playoff than it is the Super Bowl. When you have 14 out of 32 teams, then everybody's included except the really bottom ones. And then you start talking about the draft. So there's a conversation for everybody. In college football, like where I live, Iowa, Minnesota is a big deal to Iowa and Minnesota because they play for one of the great trophies. Same thing with Wisconsin, Wisconsin and Minnesota and all these other games.
An axe.
Yeah. It's been great traveling trophies, but it's not relevant when you consider what's for the playoff, but if they still have the sellout crowd and they still have people watching it, then maybe we should look at it too.
But do you think it's good to be postseason focused and not national championship focused? I think that and I'm not saying I agree one way or the other. I just mean that we've almost villainized the thought process of narrowly focusing on which teams are capable of winning the national championship. And I don't know if that's unhealthy.
I don't think it's unhealthy. I just think that college football is such a vivid tapestry and is so interesting in a bunch of different ways that I like the fact that this season feels like it's allowed us to examine a lot of the things that make the sport interesting without turning a laser focus to, all right, looks like Georgia or Alabama in the SEC, Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten, Oklahoma and nobody in the Big 12. Pac-12's out. Don't even worry about them. And Clemson in the ACC. That's it. Okay, and there are a lot of times at this point we've already narrowed it down.
Which is funny because even though there are a lot of teams who are still left, it's probably still going to be the four.
Probably.
But
I feel more
I do think it's cool that
we're
talking about Illinois and Syracuse on this podcast on October 19th.
Yeah. I love it. And you know what else we're going to talk about when we come back?
Iowa's offense?
We're going to talk about Iowa's offense. Sorry, Scott Docterman.
Damn.
But
all right.
Listen, we may never see anything like this again, so we're going to cherish every freaking minute of it. Sling has something for everyone. All your favorite shows on your favorite channels, all right at your fingertips. What you watch is up to you. It really just depends on what kind of mood you're in. So if you're looking for sports, Sling's got you covered with pro and college football and basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, golf, racing, and so much more. Sling also has reality TV, so you can keep up with the latest gossip on today's hottest shows on channels like TLC, Bravo, MTV, and more. And don't forget about news. Get up to date with today's most trusted sources like MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Feeling adventurous? Explore thousands of movies and shows on demand. So what kind of mood are you in? No matter your answer, Sling has what you need. And getting Sling is easy. Sign up and start watching in just 5 minutes. You can stream on any device and record up to 50 hours on your included DVR space. And the best part is you can pause or customize your subscription at any time. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. Reserve Bar is your online source for premium luxury spirits, wine, and champagne. And now, Reserve Bar offers same-day delivery. Reserve Bar has a vast lineup of rare and hard-to-find bottles, premium brands, celebrity spirits, and limited releases that you just won't find at your local store. So when you get that gift for a person, they can't find it, you found it, well, you don't have to tell them where, but I think you should. It was Reserve Bar. And no one does spirits gifting better than Reserve Bar. Looking for an elevated gift? ReserveBar.com has you covered. You can have that gift delivered right to their door. You can also get it engraved, perfect for birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, you name it. Also, if you're doing the home bartending thing, they've got everything, glassware, barware, all the stuff you're going to need. Or if you don't feel like mixing it up yourself, they've got a bunch of ready-to-drink cocktails, huge collection, canned cocktails, great for parties when you don't have time to tend the bar. And of course, they're perfect for tailgating season. Visit reservebar.com today and use the promo code Andy to save $10 on your first purchase of $75 or more on spirits, wine, or pre-made cocktails, but only when you use our special offer at reservebar.com with code Andy. That's reservebar.com, code Andy. This offer expires December 31st, 2022. Reservebar.com, and the code is Andy. Welcome back. We now get to the part that Scott has been dreading all week. The part where we talk about the offense he covers. But Scott, you had an amazing story.
Great story. You did this to yourself, dude.
In The Athletic on Wednesday. Iowa's Red Zone production, and you've rechristened it the Dead Zone, and it has nothing to do with that Anthony Michael Hall show on USA Network.
Yeah, it's. I feel like I'm like the kid that got invited to the slumber party because he has like a eighth toe or something like that. It's like, hey, show everybody your toe.
Look at the toe. Look at it.
So that's kind of where we are with Iowa. But Iowa, as we know, has a million different problems on offense, and I documented all of them. But this one, I think, is the worst of the worst, which is what they do in the dead zone. It's depth defying, not even death defying. I mean, the fact is that they've. I went back not only this 6-game stretch, but their last 8 before that, when they started 6-0 and got all the way up to number 2, and then since then they're 7-7. They've thrown 15 passes for a total of 3 yards inside the 10-yard line. Only 4 passes. They throw laterally every damn time. They've thrown 4 passes into the end zone over that period from inside the 10, and 3 of them were last year with a backup quarterback. So only once this year, and it was a touchdown pass to Luke Lachey at the goal line. And then when you look outside in the red zone itself, it's not much better. I mean, it's only 6. So they've thrown 6 times into the end zone in the red zone for the last 14 games. So how are you going to score points when you're not even going to throw it to the end zone when your players aren't guys who could beat guys off the dribble? That's among all the. This is to me is the heart of coordination and the heart of play calling. I mean, because you're not sending your receivers in there and you're not asking your quarterback to throw it into hot lava.
I'm trying to do math here. And you tell me
if
I got this
here
right.
We go.
So Ohio State's a 29.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
So the over-under is 49.5. So that means that they're expecting I failed again.
They're expecting about a 40-9 game.
40-9.
Yeah, or 39 to 8, 39 to 9, 39 to 10.
Yeah, I did
that.
The math wrong in my head, but I thought maybe that they thought that Iowa would score multiple touchdowns in this game, and that's not the case. But I wonder if they will be able to score an offensive touchdown on Saturday.
Yeah, they might. They almost did the last. Well, no, they almost did because they had the ball at the 5, but then they went backwards and had to kick a field goal. So. And then they had a defensive touchdown called back. So Will they be able to score an offensive one or a defensive one? I think they'll score one of the ways, but I don't think they'll score much more than that. And it's a real damn shame, too, because this defense, I'm not going to say it's a world beater, but it's really good. And it's not going to look really good on Saturday because Ohio State does that to a lot of good teams. And unfortunately for them, their offense isn't going to sustain drives long enough to where it gives their defensive punchers chance.
Well, what do you think the score is going to be, Scott?
45-10.
So you think they're going to cover?
I do. Because I don't think Iowa could score. As I said, I mean, I think their defense, if they had a chance, they could keep the score down a little bit. But they,
because 45 points would be a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, but I mean, they scored 52 on Wisconsin and 49 on Michigan State, and I think Iowa's better. But those teams still have better offenses than Iowa.
Can't keep the ball long enough.
I kind of feel like this game is like a 38-10 type game, 35-10.
Only if Ryan Day calls off the dogs or Ohio State's backups don't score on them is the key. The number that blew my mind in your story, Scott, wasn't anything about how bad the current offense is. It was how capable it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Nate Stanley, from 2017 to 2019, threw 47 red zone touchdown passes.
Mm-hmm.
47! Like, I can't even – they're not going to score 47 touchdowns in a 2-year span, are they?
Let me put it to you this way. Over that 14-game period, Spencer Petras has thrown 3 touchdown passes. The last time they played Ohio State in 2017, Nate Stanley threw 5. So, and each tight end caught 2. They both are in the NFL and starting, by the way. And they had a pretty good couple of tackles, too.
TJ Hawkinson, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, they were very prolific in that part of the field, and they had players who could make plays. And they also had a wide receiver who's on Dallas's practice squad who's really good fade route runner. They don't throw fades. They don't throw anything. So it's really been – they don't do anything well. They don't have any part of their game that you could say, well, they can lean on this. Maybe they can run the ball like they used to, or they have – they've got good tight ends, but they don't execute them well enough.
So we played the audio of you asking Brian Ferentz last week, have you thought about stepping down? And I said, I don't feel like that's the right question for Brian Ferentz because this isn't Japan. Like, nobody resigns in shame here. Like, it is you go till somebody fires you. But the problem is the guy who, like, I can't imagine firing my own son. So if I were Kirk Ferentz, it would be very difficult I would rather get fired myself than fire my own son. And that's what makes this situation feel so impossible to me.
There's that. I think also you cannot remove Kirk Ferentz from this. Everybody wants to blame Brian, but it's Kirk's offense. And a lot of times Brian does want to do a little bit more. I'm not saying he'd be great at it, but I'm just saying he would want to do more. Kirk does hamstring him. He wants to be this risk-averse team. But the problem, what we're seeing in like the red zone, is that they're not even really – they're looking to score in the easiest way possible, or at least make sure that they don't turn the ball over. And it's just not an easy way to win.
So they basically just operate scared at all times.
On offense, they do, no question. Risk averse is their strategy, and it's Kirk's job. So I think at this point, the smartest path for Iowa, if Brian Ferentz was to go with Bill O'Brien, who he's really a good friends with after the Patriots, and be an offensive line coach and a run game coordinator, he'd be great at that. He's a fantastic offensive line coach. But Kirk's going to still have to take a step back and let somebody coordinate it. That doesn't mean they have to run, the spread and pass on every down, but just let somebody do something different and be more of a figurehead. If he did that, again, this defense is really good. They could still coach the hell out of offensive line when they're old enough. This year they're not. And then they'll be competitive. But until then, they're just going to be a laughing stock. And that's the reason why we're talking about them right now, because they're 3-3.
Historic. We're talking about them because they're historic. It's not to torture you, Scott. It's not to torture you, dear listener. It's just that we're never going to see anything like this again. And I feel like we should memorialize it in some way, shape, or form, and that is talk about it whenever we can.
Can we talk about something else, though, that I wanted to bring up to you and I've been thinking about nonstop since the weekend?
Yes, right after the break, because that's a great tease, Ari. So
I'm good at
Ari
this.
will talk about something that has been bothering him nonstop since the weekend when we come back. So you've heard me talk about Roback quite a bit, but I got to tell you, my green Roback hoodie, probably the greatest garment ever. I mean, one, it brings out my eyes, but two, and I don't have any empirical evidence on this, but I'm pretty sure it made me a better athlete because I was wearing this when I caught a pass in an SEC football game. And actually, it was fellow Roback endorser Will Anderson who caused the throw from Texas A&M quarterback Haynes King that went over the sideline, that hit off Texas A&M athletic director Ross Bjork's hand and landed in my left hand. That's right, left hand. One-handed catch in an SEC game. It has to be because of the Roback hoodie. Roback has the best hoodies, the best performance polos. They've got joggers now. They've got the everyday shorts, which you are going to wear every day. And again, I don't have empirical evidence on this, but anecdotally, they make you a great athlete. There's a reason that their slogan is crave activity. They make you better at being active. So here's what you're going to do to become a better athlete through Roback. Use the code Andy at roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off polos, Q-zips, hoodies, shorts, joggers with the code Andy. That's roback.com, code Andy, and get ready to become elite. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You've already used LinkedIn to figure out how to connect to people. Now, use it to find the best job candidate. Add the job that you're hiring for and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word fast that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then figure out who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Andy. That's linkedin.com/Andy to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. linkedin.com/Andy. Welcome back. All right, Ari Wasserman. Something's been bugging you. Hit us with it.
Yeah, I saw a few good segues here. So, Alias Gray in the comments here wrote, "Never hire someone you can't fire," which reminded me of this. Then you read that beautiful ad for LinkedIn Jobs saying that every hire that you make is a high stakes wager.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about how stupid it is to give any coach a 10-year deal?
Yes.
Because of the Penn State situation. And like, I don't know if we're like, jumping the gun a little bit with Mel Tucker at Michigan State when things aren't going that well, but like, why don't talk about high stakes hire LinkedIn? I mean, what are these contracts going to go extinct? Why are we doing this, Scott? Like, are you with me on this? Come on.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I've seen it a couple of times where the school I cover, and it really backfired for a while, and then it turned out to be an okay situation. But you look at Penn State, last year, I think that there was the critical mass of Penn State fans were like, okay, thanks for what you did, James Franklin. You brought us back to relevance. Bill O'Brien did the heavy lifting. You took us forward. But I think most of the fans would have been okay with a different coach. Instead, by putting him there, I mean, what's Penn State going to do now? I mean, they don't look to me like they're going to be anything better than third in the East. And when the Big Ten goes to one single division, they're not going to be any better than third in the Big Ten. Mel Tucker, they got scared off because, oh my God, might lose him to LSU after, this year. And then now I don't even know if they're going to make a bowl game. So I think there's a fear. And let's face it, agents can run circles around ADs when it comes to scheduling or it comes to contracts.
So I was texting Andy today, and I want to buy an iPad, which I said on the show last week. And I thought, I'm going to go take a look at these things, and I'm really trying to soul searching because I have a propensity to spend money on really stupid stuff, and I'm trying to be better at it. am I actually going to use this thing? Okay. And I didn't buy it today because I'm still pondering. And I wonder if the people who hand out 100 million guaranteed, if it was like their own personal money, like if they
Never.
would, it just seems like a really terrible purchase. And there's only,
if they worked in a business that had to run a profit, they also wouldn't do it.
it's like fake money. It's like fake money. And nobody is like, say it out loud. $100 million guaranteed over a decade. Now, there's one silver lining that I think you could make, which is in the case of Michigan State, they are locked in with this guy for at least 7 years, right?
Texas A&M, same thing.
And it removes the knee-jerk reactions or the temptation to have a knee-jerk reaction. It forces you to stay the course with the same person for longer than you typically would under a normal contract. And maybe by doing so, you give that person enough time, more time than they're usually afforded to right the ship, and then things get good in year 6 and 7 because of the patience, the unrelenting patience. But I just, like everything you just said, Scott, about Franklin, it's like they gave, did that contract come before Lincoln got hired or after he got hired by USC? It was
before, yeah.
So maybe the idea is we don't want to lose this guy to USC. But for the life of me, and I'm not saying the guy should be fired, but the way they lost that game, guys, it wasn't that they lost. It was the way that they lost. They were completely out of it from a physical standpoint from even the second quarter on, even though they were only losing by 2 at halftime. And to be locked into somebody for 9 more years for that much more money during a time in which they were at a crossroads anyway is so bizarre to me. And I don't know that anybody in the sport outside of Dabo Sweeney, Kirby Smart, and Nick Saban, I wouldn't even give Ryan Day that contract.
No, it's a recipe for hopelessness if you have 2 bad seasons in a row, or 2, not even bad, 2 mediocre seasons in a row, because then it feels like you'll never pull out of it. You can't possibly make a change. You have no leverage, and then you're like, that's where. Remember, we've said this on the show, Ari. I think you said this a couple episodes ago. What you're fighting against is not fans being mad at you. It's fans not caring.
Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen to you is people stop caring. And so if they feel locked in to a situation that is never going to change, that's when they stop
and there's
caring.
No hope to change it.
Right.
That's where you run into a problem. And that's why, like, another game we have not talked about, because we were talking about teams that are having really good years this year. Texas A&M, South Carolina this weekend fascinates the hell out of me.
Yeah.
If Texas A&M goes to Columbia and South Carolina wins that game, what happens in College Station?
Some more fires.
Yeah. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Right.
Yeah. And then the thing is, you're afraid at one point that the fires will just stop lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. And that's the way it is, especially in college sports. And nobody seems to remember a few years ago, I think Forbes even wrote a story about, Iowa should fire Kirk Ferentz because, from 2002 to 2009, 4 times they were in the top 8. Then they gave him a 10-year deal. And then from 2010 through 2014, they were 34-30 overall in 1921 in the Big Ten. And then the season tickets dropped by 17%. But by giving, you could argue it one way or the other and say, look, it's time you need to make it a change, that this is just going on perpetually. Well, then he actually had the time to go in 2015 and win 12 games. And up until this year, over the 5-year period, they had the 8th best winning percentage in Power 5. So you can argue it from different ways, but you got to be confident that that person is the right person for the job to continue to weather it when you do drop down. Is Jimbo Fisher that guy? Is Mel Tucker that guy? And I'd argue Mel Tucker doesn't have it. He has one good season at Michigan State and gave him all that money.
Right, he doesn't have the body of work to even know one way or the other. Jimbo Fisher at least has a longer body of work that you can kind of say, oh, well, he's done this, he's done this. But here's the thing that I find very interesting about this, because the fastest way to get donations, and that's these athletic departments still very much reliant on donations. They're tax deductible. they help the person giving too, because it's money they would have given to Uncle Sam anyway. But then this makes them, gives them a chance to get her name on a building or feel like a big shot or whatever, however you want to do it. But winning is the easiest and fastest way to get you donations. The second one is hope. So sometimes making that change resets the clock, generates new hope, gets you donations that you wouldn't have gotten. So there's an incentive to, if you can't be great, if you're mediocre, change. Because just continuing to be mediocre, and I mean mediocre by your own standard, because Penn State standard, Texas A&M standard, probably different than the standard at, say, Georgia Tech. If you're mediocre by your own standard, then people stop hoping and people stop giving money.
I just think that $100 million, you should be able to get more than what they're getting.
You should be able to punch up a weight class. And for Bama, that's national championship every year, which Saban is damn near did. At Iowa, it's be able to compete at a level comparable to the Blue Bloods, but not necessarily a national championship. But at Penn State, it should be blue blood territory. It should be getting to the playoff. It should be winning Big Ten championships. And instead they're going to be at best 10-2 in the regular season and
not competitive with Penn State or with Michigan. Not right. Competitive physically,
because those touchdowns they were gift touchdowns. They weren't earned touchdowns.
No, that game was over before it's. I mean, Andy was ordering Taco Bells in the second quarter, I think.
Yeah, long Blake Corum run. That was it. Yeah. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm checking. I'm download. I literally downloaded the Taco Bell app after.
I'm just curious if there's going to be a cool off period from this, or if this is going to be the new norm. Because that was 3. Because even Brian Kelly got one similar, didn't he?
Yeah,
he did, and now. And it's interesting because the only reason he left Notre Dame was he had a contract like that, but felt like some of the promises made from we're going to make these changes, spend money on these resources standpoint weren't kept. And so he went to LSU, and now he's got that contract. And if things start not working at LSU, well, he's yours.
Yeah, I almost think it's like a slap in the face to Saban. It's like all that guy's accomplished in this sport, to be in the same ballpark of him financially is just insane.
Yes. And I've done a story about what Nick Saban is probably actually worth to Alabama.
Yeah, with
and I've actually
admissions and stuff.
People
at
Alabama, like, what do we really think? And the answer usually comes in like between 25 and 30 million a year. Like, that's what he's really
because of the expanded population of the student body and stuff.
Yeah, they bring in more out-of-state students, paying full freight. I mean, he brings in so much more money to the university beyond the athletic
to find the
department.
word tuition, more tuition.
Yes, yeah, and it is, but he and Dabo are the only ones.
Kirby too, I'd give it to him.
Yeah, I think Kirby has reached that point, but Kirby's only in year 6. But I think
but
right.
Kirby gets when he
definitely gets it.
Yeah. It's like James Franklin. It's not like it was going into year 3 too. It's like, at least with Michigan State, there's the air of the unknown, of like, what could this be? It's like, I think that we've got a pretty good idea of what Penn State's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't capitalize when they had the chance, when they had Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley, and they're a nice program, but they're not competitive with Michigan, and I don't know that they're going to be competitive with Ohio State, and wouldn't surprise me at all if they lose one more game the rest of the year. So I think that was a bad investment by an AD who was retiring, and to give him that, I think that's the other part. I mean, Sandy Barber was retiring. She retired in June, and she gave him that 6-7 months before. That's just crazy.
That's the other craziest thing about it too. I was talking to John Hayes, our producer, about this. It's like you hand out $100 million contract and then bolt.
Yeah. Scott Woodward at Texas A&M also.
Yeah.
Now he gave another one out at LSU, and I guess Ross Bjork's on the hook now because he extended Jimbo. And that's the thing. Like, if you're Ross Bjork, you probably were worried about Jimbo going to LSU, and you probably had people saying you got to lock him down. But the fact of the matter is,
And when he did it, the program was headed in the right direction.
when everybody's mad, and let's say they do lose to South Carolina, or they go 8-4, 7-5 this year, and everybody's freaking out. Guess who they're going to take it out on?
The only person they can.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating discussion because I know the money's coming in, the television deals, yada yada yada, but these guys are spending money like it's fake money.
Yeah, if they had a Regents that wanted, I mean, if this was a private corporation, you could forget it. I mean, that would never happen.
Be like the Athletic saying, you know what, Ari, you flirted with Rivals.com. We're going to give you $500,000 a year for 10 years. Right. And no matter what you do, we can't fire you.
Yes. Whether you're good or not, whether you're bringing in more readers or not, bringing in more listeners or not, we're still paying you.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have to do it this way.
I would accept that too, Athletic.
And that's what I wrote this last couple of years. I've done these buyout studies. They do not have to do it this way. There are times when I just shake my head. Like when Ed Orgeron got hired at LSU is a great example. His buyout initially, it wasn't massive by today's buyout standards, but the fact that there was a buyout at all.
Because he would have taken it without it, right?
Exactly. Why are you negotiating against yourself?
Yeah. The thing too, and I don't mean to pound the point home with Penn State, it's just one of the three. On a scale from 1 to 10, how exceptional have the results been for Franklin there? Like, is he exceeded how remarkable is that?
When he won it was absolutely exceeding expectations.
What year is this though? Is this year 8?
Right. This is 6. We are 6 years removed from the Big Ten title.
So he's going into year 9 now. If I would have said to a Penn State fan the day he got hired, here's what the next 9 years are going to look like. Is that a automatic yes snap call? Or is that
the day he got hired, they might say that.
Yeah.
Well,
because of the situation they were coming out of.
Yeah.
No,
they had already started to come out of it by the time they hired him.
Right.
Yeah. O'Brien did a really good job in the 2 years he was there.
Now, here's the one difference going forward, though. 4 times they would have made the playoff if it had been a 12-team playoff. If they're making a 12-team playoff every year, and once every couple of years they're threatening to be in that Final Four, then that changes everything to me.
It changes nothing, but it changes everything.
It does, because the expectations are to get to the playoff.
Because they would have been, you're right, they would have had multiple appearances. But if they'd have been bounced, because we see this with the NCAA tournament, and I know they're talking now about expanding the NCAA tournament, and coaches love that because they're like, well, if I make the tournament, I save my job. No, again, the standard is the standard is on a kind of continuum. It fluctuates based on your program's expectations. If you're at Alabama and there's a 12-team playoff and you never make the semifinals, you're going to be fired. It's sort of like being at Duke and never getting to the Final Four in basketball. Like, you're going to get fired for that. So everybody thinks, oh, well, if I just make it, it's fine. No, everybody gets stuff after a while, and they're like, no, now we want more.
Only makes it because it's expanded, It's
but then it's different going to the Peach Bowl where you're playing a game versus a playoff where you have an opportunity to advance and win a national title. Because if they went to the Cotton Bowl against Memphis a few years ago, so what? But if they win that and then go to the national quarterfinals, it's a different.
James Franklin doesn't have to change anything for him to say, I've been to the playoff 4 years in the last 10 years.
That's
you can do the same exact thing and have the same and have a different result.
The question is, will he be able to do that going forward? If they're not, I mean, you're going to have to be probably the third best team in the Big Ten to get in.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't get into the playoff when it expands to 12, that means they've regressed. So
yeah, exactly. So it will be fascinating to see. But he's got probably 3 more years at least before there's any real heat based on that contract.
Yeah.
And the most I can say is
Godspeed.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be the Texas A&M contract. I mean,
I would take Texas A&M's on the field
7 years.
I would take Texas A&M's on the field results right now in the class that they signed last year over Penn State situation, and 100 times out of 100.
The only difference is, man, they hit the mother load with both running back and quarterback. Penn State with Drew Aller and Nick Singleton. So I think they have an opportunity there.
Right. We may be having a different conversation about this next year, and we may have a different conversation about Texas A&M next year as well. But Jimbo being Jimbo, like, and we've talked about this a million times on this podcast already. Jimbo's going to have to stop being Jimbo.
The path to fixing it at
A&M
A&M is much shorter if you actually go down the path. So if you don't go down the path, then then that's the problem, right? And I know that's frustrating. What's frustrating Texas A&M fans?
No, there's a very
fixing
clear
A&M
path to
football
fixing it.
is a very yellow brick roadish type path that all you got to do is take one step down and you're there. Like with Penn State, they're recruiting better, and like you said, Scott, I mean their 1-2 punch at quarterback and running back into the future is a very exciting thing. But God, I just like, for the life of me, do not understand this. Mm-hmm. Anyway, thanks for indulging me. I appreciate it.
That was awesome. I listen, Ari, anytime you have a thought like that, be sure you let it out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
it. It makes for good pod. And
yeah.
Also, do it right before a commercial break. That's the most I can.
And then tie in the commercial into the show like I did.
Yeah. Yes.
Like a boss.
I feel like I'm floating, looking over my body from above when I do that.
You're like Will Ferrell in Old School. I blacked out for a second.
That's how you debate.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Guys, there's a lot in this feed that we can have some fun with. As I mentioned, Deuce Vaughn is on with Max and Sam. Chris Vanini joined Nicole Auerbach on Power Hour. And Grace Rayner also joined for a very fun conversation. I believe there's some Taylor Swift talk in there too. Which I'm
we made it through this entire show without any grab ass, by the way. So for all you, they don't talk enough about football.
Yeah,
this is a football episode.
Yeah, next time we're going to break down my story about Georgia Tech overhauling the punt team. We're going to spend a whole hour and a half on it.
Next time you're going to have to hear Nicole eat cottage cheese.
That's right. Nicole Auerbach eats cottage cheese. And then we talk about maybe the 12-team playoff expanding. And we pick some games. Well, no, not the 12-team. Oh, sorry. Bad choice of words by me. Bad host. Not the 12-team playoff expanding. The 12-team playoff happening at a certain time or not.
Right.
We'll talk about that. And we'll pick some games against the spread when we're back on Friday. We'll talk to you then.